This is Lee Cronin's follow up to Evil Dead Rise, and his previous one before that, the boy near the big, I don't know, the hole in the ground. That's
The
what
hole
it
in the
is.
ground. Yeah, right.
That's right. I had it, then I lost it.
Yeah.
Lee
2019, The
Cronin,
Hole in the Ground.
Lee Cronin's The Mummy is a reimagining of the Mummy mythos. This is the Universal monsters are owned by Universal, and so they can't just call it The Mummy. That's why you have the long title, and the story's a little bit different. It takes place. It starts in Egypt with the Cannon family. Jack Reynor, who you might remember from Midsummer, is the father. They're living there. He's a reporter. One day, their young daughter, Katie, is kidnapped. Never seen. They don't find her. They move back to the States. 8 years later, they have another child, and they get a call from Egypt saying, "Hey, your daughter actually has been found, and she's still alive. She is in some sort of catatonic state. We're not real sure, but you can come get her and bring her home. She might look a little cursed." It is at this point that I would probably be like, just keep it.
Yeah, no, just keep the kid. Yeah, no, it's fine.
No,
I'm not
it's
going to come
fine.
get him. Yeah.
So they bring Katie home, who is in this catatonic state. She's like has really gray skin, and she can't talk. In a wheelchair, and then really strange things start to happen around the house. The curse of the mummy comes alive. We're not real sure what it wants. That's our setup. Part of this movie works. A lot of it doesn't. The things that do, it is real gory. It is real body horror, hard on the body horror part. Like, you are going to get your money's worth if that's the kind of horror you're into. And we have creepy kids. We have like a creepy kid is more or less possessed by the spirit of the mummy. Like I said, a lot of real gross out stuff. The stuff that doesn't work is that it's simply too long. It is 2 hours and 15 minutes. Like, again, 2 hours and 15 minutes. This is a 90-minute idea. It goes on way too long. It mostly has what I call setup fatigue. It just takes too long to get going. It takes a full 40 minutes before we get Katie back home and she starts, causing trouble. This is what we know from the trailer, and it takes us all of Act 1 to get there. That's a little frustrating. And it's this clumsy back and forth where they start in Egypt, they go back to the States, they go back to Cairo, then bring her back to it's like smooth this out somehow. One-way trip. Like I said, it's way too long. Part of the reason is you get this backstory of the mummy's curse, essentially. And I assumed that they were going to be exploring the pyramids, and young Katie goes into a tomb she's not supposed to and touches something she's not supposed to and, gets possessed. That's not what happens. There's this very overly complicated backstory about some secret society, something out of like Indiana Jones 3 of like, it's our family's sacred duty for 80 generations to, contain the spirit of the mummy. And it's really complicated. Turns into a cop procedural in the B plot. Meanwhile, all the stuff is going wrong at home. People start dying. People start getting hurt. Weird stuff with animals. Again, trying to still figure out what happened because they don't really know. They don't know who took her, who took their daughter, what happened in the interim time. So I think that's really the things that don't work. It's simply too long. Cut this down to 90, 100 minutes. And you're there. Also, the horror is a very specific, very gross out kind of stuff. A lot of it involving children. There have been some complaints about kind of having this like deadite child be the center of this. So your mileage might vary on the child horror aspect of it. But so some of it works, some of it doesn't.
Boy, this sounds like a handful. I want to ask about writer-director Lee Cronin, right, whose name is at the top of the film. Part of that is to let the audiences know, hey, this is distinct and separate from any other Universal mummy projects, right? This is its own thing. This doesn't have to do with the Brendan Fraser mummy. It doesn't have to do with Tom Cruise mummy, right? That's the deal, right? This is its own like shaped off movie.
Yes, exactly. It is a completely self-contained, separate thing. I think money wise, it's doing okay. It was made for about $20 million. It's made 65, so it's in the green, in the black, so it's doing well. I think they might do more. It's pretty gross out. Even more so than Evil Dead Rise. And Evil Dead Rise, it's a pretty gory Evil Dead movie, and this is even more so than that.
Yeah, I feel like you can't talk about this without talking about Evil Dead Rise a little bit. Like, that's the other thing with Lee Cronin's name up at the top. Lee Cronin is the writer and director of Evil Dead Rise. And they're doing Evil Dead Burn. They're doing another Evil Dead movie. We covered the teaser for it just last week on the Trailer Park. Hit the channel, you can see it. But he's not a part of that. He's an executive producer on that. Like, a little bit of money, a little bit of creative direction, I think. But otherwise, other people are doing it. He's doing this. Am I crazy in saying this seems a little bit like we have Evil Dead Rise at home, or maybe even something between like Evil Dead and The Exorcist, right? Like we're bringing the possessed kid back to the house, and we gotta, try to free them of the evil or whatever.
Yeah, just like the Evil Dead, it's a cursed movie. Our main character or the daughter gets cursed and possessed essentially by this evil ancient Egyptian spirit, and then all sorts of havoc starts happening around their house. Which it's funny, they have like this crawl space inside the wall, and it's the biggest crawl space I've ever seen. Like full-bodied humans can like run on the the space between the walls. It's really kind of funny, but it is that same. Like I said, it's more like an Evil Dead movie. It's more like The Exorcist than necessarily The Curse of the Mummy, which I realize is a little bit difficult to even explain. I was like, how do you even describe what the kind of the classic mummy is besides the mummy itself wrapped up in bandages? Right. Basically, there's so I think you really do have to get creative with it because I think it's a very simple premise to begin with.
I want to just a couple more questions before we wrap it up. I got to talk about this gross out stuff. Because I heard it from you. I've heard it from a couple other people who have seen it. Quite gory. What do you call this in horror? Because Blumhouse does a bit. Like when you have a horror movie that's kind of mid, so you just ramp up like the gore, so you're like leaning back in your chair, like gross out. They used
to call it torture porn.
There you go. There was a time, yeah. And then
it's a little bit happened. Like it's a little bit like that. Without the torture isn't like direct. That's not the objective. It just ends up happening.
Yeah.
I'll briefly describe one thing, kind of because this happens towards the beginning, and it only gets worse. But we are clipping poor Katie's nails, which are like solid stone at this point, and you're just waiting for like an entire toenail to rip off. That's what the setup is. But what happens is so much worse, where like her skin begins to come off, not just the nail, and you're like, and it's on a child, so it's a lot. It's a lot to deal with. And that's one of the more mild. That's one of the more mild things that happens in the movie.
That's so weird. Let's start to corner this because there's certain horror films that really lean in on this, and I'm just kind of fine with it. It just makes me more uncomfortable than anything else. I want to ask about Jack Reynor. Last question. Yeah. Well, second to last question because I got to ask recommendations. How's Jack? I've not seen him since Midsommar, right? Like he ends up in a bear in that movie. He's kind of the big lead here. I know his co-star has done some television for sure. She's stepping up, but I know him. How's he?
Jack Reynor he does a really good job of doing Crazy Eyes, this big, wide thing. Yeah. He does it in Midsommar. He does it again here. It's really good at that. The movie is a little bit all over the place because first it's kind of the mother is doing some of the investigation, then he's doing some of the investigation, and then some missing persons cop back in Cairo is the main. It's jumping around about who our protagonist is. Jack Raynor's the biggest name here, but he's not necessarily the main character. It's a little unfocused that way, but he's fine. He also, like Midsommar, he is not having a good time in this movie either.
All right, a little long, a little too gross, a little misguided. Would you recommend Lee Cronin's The Mummy?
I think if you're a fan of Lee Cronin, his past work, Evil Dead Rise, kind of Saw, gross out, body horror, it's for you. It is a little bit too long at 2 hours, 15 minutes. It could be a half hour shorter. I think that it would help it a lot. It takes forever to get started. But once it gets going, it's pretty gnarly in the horror stuff. It has a lot of fun with that. It's not really it's not scary. Like I said, it's gross out horror, not fear horror. And the kind of B plot, the whodunit backstory is a little bit too complicated and goes on too long.
All right. That's Lee Cronin's The Mummy. Thanks for watching it. Yeah, we didn't cover it on the show. I know a couple people had asked if we would. I didn't think we would get to it. Shout out to you going out of your way to see it. That's episode 334 of Off Script Film Review. I got 2 pop stars and a cursed child. Pretty good for the episode, I think. Not too shabby. What are we watching next week?
So next week we're on break because I'm doing some traveling, but we'll be back on May 12th with Billie Eilish, "Hit Me Hard and Soft," the tour, live in 3D. That's quite the title. That's the full title. I'm a fan of Billie Eilish, but I'm also more interested. We're both more interested. What is James Cameron?